Aperture.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to tonight's program. My name is Emily Stewart. I'm the Manager of Education and Engagement Programs at Aperture Foundation. Tonight, we are excited to host this artist talk with Maria Antelman as part of our decade-long partnership with Parsons School of Design. For those of you who are not familiar with Aperture, it was founded in 1952 by a group of artists, writers, and curators as a common ground for photography. Today, Aperture is a multi-publisher that unites the photography community in print, in person, and online. Aperture and Parsons would like to offer deep gratitude and respect to the Lenape peoples, past, present, and future. We acknowledge that Aperture and Parsons both sit on the island known as Mannahatta in Lenapehoking, the Lenape homeland. We would also like to encourage everyone watching to engage with and learn from the Indigenous communities whose ancestral territories you are currently tuning in from. Tonight's program is presented in partnership with the photography program at Parsons School of Design of the New School, and is supported in part by generous donations from our Board of Trustees, our members, and other individuals, and with major support from foundations, including the Ann Levy Charitable Trust, Henry Luce Foundation, the Horace W. Goldsmith Foundation, the Kanakia Foundation, Murthy Nayak Foundation, and Jane Smith Turner Foundation, and public funds from the National Endowment for the Arts, and the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs in partnership with the City Council. Before we begin, I would also like to mention that we'll be having a Q&A towards the end of the event. So if you have any questions, please post them in the chat at the bottom of your screen. And now, Arthur O., Associate Professor of Photography from Parsons, will introduce Maria. Thank you.
Welcome all, greetings. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. I'm Arthur O., faculty in the photography program at Parsons School of Design, which is a division of the New School University in New York City. Parsons BFA and MFA programs in photography provide diverse and rigorous platforms for students to engage in a cross-cultural and social justice-based experience that prepares them for the global context in which they will graduate. I just want to thank Emily Stewart and the Aperture Foundation for the continued partnership with Parsons for these incredibly rich public programs. It is my great pleasure to introduce Maria Antelman for tonight's talk. Maria Antelman is a visual artist whose work explores the relationship between technology and the human condition. Inspired by new and old technologies, Maria's work addresses our society's dependence on technology and the way humans adapt to meet the needs of the digital landscape. Originally from Athens, Greece, Maria is now based in New York. Upcoming and recent solo shows include Soft Interface at the Bemis Center for Contemporary Art in Omaha, Nebraska, Mechanisms of Affection at the Visual Arts Center at the University of Texas at Austin, and Disassembler at Pioneer Works in Brooklyn. Maria has been awarded the production grants from the Onassis Foundation and from the National Museum of Contemporary Art in Athens, Greece, and has held residencies at Pioneer Works and the International Studio and Curatorial Program in Brooklyn. Maria's work is currently on view in the online exhibition Companion Pieces, New Photography 2020 at the Museum of Modern Art in New York. Well, the floor is yours, Maria.
Hi, thank you very much. Aperture, Parsons, and of course the people, the Lenape people. As Arthur said, I originally come from Athens, Greece, and this is from where I'm talking to you right now. Even though I'm New York based, I'm still in Athens. I grew up here. I studied art history in Madrid, and almost 20 years ago, I moved to the US and I started making work. I shoot 35 film, mainly with an M6 camera. I digitize my photographs and I make videos, photo montages, animations, sculptures, and digital prints. I'm gonna show you some early works, and then I'm gonna move to newer work and specifically the works that are in the MoMA show. I'm gonna start with a video. an excerpt from a video. Can you see it?
Yep.
Okay. So starting with the excerpt of this video.
The orientation of the mind toward the past is simply an ordering of events to help the mind organize what the human being experiences. These forms of energy can be thought of as contemporary or in the present, but representing primordial processes and primordial manifestations of universal forms of energy and consciousness. These forms are grotesque to the human mind because they are deeply hidden in the unconscious of the human mind. They preceded more refined forms of energy and consciousness, more refined forms.
Some of them are in serious need of help in parts of the world today. That if we're willing to relax some of our extreme concern about reintroductions, there are some.
So in this video titled The Wild West from 2017, I use images that I shot inside early NASA research centers. At that time, I was interested in the techno-archaeology of the future. I also used some archival images from NASA and some machine vision graphics, which shows us what machines are seeing. And then I put together these voiceovers that are scripts about rewilding the American West by a geoscientist who had this idea of reintroducing extinct megafaunas, and a voice of a medium who channels directly the megaforms from the remote past. It's a medium that I asked to do this. While putting together this video, I was thinking about the techno-scientific wilderness with self-learning machines and of wilderness in primal forms, and also the uncertainty of the new wild in nature. All of my videos are composed of montages, or they are like montages of different sources of information. I put all the information I received from the world together, and I try to create these strange combinations. And here you see how I present this video as a video sculpture. And this is from, this installation is at Pioneer Works. And I'm really interested in the relation of the viewer and the body with the screen and the technology in general, and how the body has to position to see the work and become part of the installation. And also I'm trying to create this immersive space that takes the viewer back and forth in time. This is another shot of the same install. This is another series titled Space Saver. It's a series of montages. With this body of work, I started using more black and white film because I felt it really suited the old reader machines. These are microfilm machines, and they worked really well with blending interfaces and physical spaces in the photo montages. I shot these microfilm readers at the Butler Library in New York, in the media room, which hosts an archive of big data, because microfilm used to be where big data was stored. It was like the storage medium, and I was fascinated by the machines, but also by the way we used to touch information, like the newspaper, the microfilm, magnetic tapes, the photographic film in my case. And Also, I was very interested in, I'm still very interested in technical gestures. Now this is how we touch the information, but digital touch nowadays is very different because it releases all these invisible commands. And also this series is about how in this data economy, we become both users, but also sources of information. And the user is inside and outside the screen. All these installations are from the Visual Arts Center at the University of Texas in Austin. This is another piece from the same series, from the same show, titled Icon, and I presented it as a photographic sculpture with this base that it was, I was thinking about a lectern, another piece of, I guess, furniture used in libraries to, you know, read information again. I'm interested in eyes because all informational objects observe us in one way or another, and they have this kind of intelligence that can only be represented with the eyes. This is, I'm going to show you another excerpt of another video.
As your hands are interacting with something, you will hear instructions indicating one or more directions in which you should be moving the respective hand. Mount the grip sensors on the hands, the pressure sensors on the fingertips, and on your palms. All movement is detected, and all performances are monitored.
The video is titled Disassembler. It is from 2018, and here you see it installed in, in Pioneer Works. Disassembler is a reverse engineering tool. It's a computer program that translates code into human language for people to understand. It is a way to understand how a system works backwards. And I created all these photo montages and animations and sculptures and portraits especially for this video. And I used natural materials and organic things and animal parts and earth constructions. I shot it all in Greece. And the soundtrack, the voiceover are technical specifications of a newly patented wristband that patented by Amazon, the company, for their warehouse workers or pickers, designed to control and monitor the movement of the pickers or workers' hands for to control their optimized performance. Here I was very interested in juxtaposing the technical instructions with the experience from the organic world and working with the land, because my interest was in the impact that automated industry has on psychologically and physically on the body of the worker and of course on society. So I tried to create a post-automated experience where gestures and bodies return to an organic world of real experiences. This is another shot of the room we built to present this video. Again, this is in Pioneer Works. From the same show is this little video sculpture. It's titled I/I, and it refers to the organ, the I, and the first person pronoun I. I like very much to play with words, and I also see them very sculpturally. So this, it was in a smaller monitor without sound. It's a looping, I call it a mythical moment. It's when the organ I becomes the camera and looks at itself, the I personal pronoun. Socrates says that the pupil is the finest part of the eye, not because it is the part which sees, but because it is the place where another person looking will find the image of himself. So the pupil of the eye is the absolute mirror where we always end up looking at our reflection. So I'm thinking a lot about, you know, the self-image making that is taking place and has become such a natural gesture, and how we lose the complexity of looking at thyself in a philosophical or Socratic way, and how the eye becomes the self-camera in, you know, this very narcissistic culture. Oh, sorry. This is another, this is from the Texas show, this piece in Austin. It's titled Seer, Deep, in parentheses, and it is an electronic sculpture of an animated photomontage. It is presented in a, oops, sorry. Oops, I wanted to play it again. In a 65-inch screen. So so I sometimes choose to animate my photomontages. I think of it as injecting code in them, and I like to pretend they're alive. I'm interested in this technical movement, in this case, a technical vision. Taken from a classical tradition, the eyes come from a kouros, and the kouri usually look right above the line of the horizon. And the eyes are from stone, so the vision is abstracted. It is a seer, someone who doesn't need eyes to see. Instead, looking deep into infinite sets of data is enough. And a definition of deep data is that it's a large-scale data of high quality, which can provide answers and solve problems. That's deep data. And I'm thinking that seeing without eyes, the seer has the gift of foresight, just like the blind oracle in the ancient Greek tragedy Tiresias. Another piece that I created after the seer, it's from last year, and here you see that Melanie Flood projects in Portland. It's titled Sentimental Conversation, and it's also two animated photomontages. It is the body of my, part of the body of my mother and my nephew, and it's a conversation between a grandmother and a grandchild. And I'm thinking a lot about our body's condition in data economy and how information technology changes our behaviors. And I'm thinking of this as a transgenerational exchange from grandmother to grandchild, transmitting life experiences as informational data. This, in a way, is a continuation of my video Disassembler, that I was thinking a lot about technical manuals and technical instructions versus transmitting experience from generation to generation, and how this is being lost with all these how to, YouTube videos and manuals, and of course, the way technology is designed that it doesn't even need any instructions. Like, you buy the phone and then you open the box and somehow the phone guides you on how to use it. So I was really interested in these experiences with technology. And with this work, the bodies in my work are starting to get integrated with information systems. And this is, I started making these frames right after, which are sculptural frames that represent systems or skeletons or supports or scaffoldings holding the information together. And I juxtapose these ancient artifacts with real bodies. These are titled Mask Arm and Face Hand. And this and I'm interested in the first technological tools that were from stone, and how now we use stone to source the materials we need for our electronics. So stone and histories, it's always there, the beginning and the end, in our technology and our history and our bodies. And with this piece, I'm gonna talk about the works that are in the show at the MoMA, the new photography show, Companion Pieces, curated by Lucy Galloon. My work is gonna go online on November 19th. I think I got it right. So this is a detail of the piece. It's a wooden structure, like a sculpture, a wall piece, that it's meant to be read as a system of visuals. I'm interested in the invisible, abstract, complex systems that are part of our lives, and how we also become parts and tools in these systems. And I'm also interested in looking at this work as a composition or as an ideogram or an equation. I think like it's asking the viewer to put all the information together. It's kind of a semiotic work. The eyes are the mirrors, and since the pupil is where the image is reflected, and the stone is a tool, but it's also a weapon, and it can break the mirror and destroy the reflection. I'm interested, it has these soft and very hard elements to it. In this piece is my youngest son, and he found the stone, and it was perfectly round, and he carried it with him, and eventually I put it in the work. This is another piece. It's titled Hypnos. I like to use the human body as the connector of the natural and the mythological and the technological world. And the Hypnos was in ancient Greek mythology, was the personification of sleep. And I think of sleep as the last refuge from technology. It's where time and information, they lose their significance or value or power over us. And in all those years that I make work, my perception of the idea of time and future and past changes as well. And in the beginning, the first years I was living in California, and I was making a lot of work about the idea of the future. And now I spend more time in Greece, and I make work about the remote past. And I think there is more hope to be found in teachings from the past. And I'm thinking about technology and the future backwards in a reverse movement. And also thinking about remote past and remote future and how they're very similar because we can only imagine them. And in our sleep and in our unconsciousness, they all come together. And this is my older son in this picture. And the ear comes from a sculpture which is at the Metropolitan Museum. Another one of those works. This is titled Wave Rider. These are all pieces from 2020. So I'm thinking of information and how we communicate by representing emotions and feelings with symbols. Like the most common emojis are happy, angry, or sad. And language is becoming visual. I'm really interested in that, how we express ourselves more and more with symbols and signs and images, and how we communicate emotional states directly, like no explanation, no words, just how I feel. And in this series, I'm working with my children and their emotions. So these are my two children. And I'm taking pictures of my children as it is the closest to a self-portrait, as I think of them as extensions of myself. And a little bit after I made this composition, I actually made a self-portrait. This is titled Self-Stranger. It's about, all of my work is about the effect of technology in our lives, and specifically information technology. This is like a piece that projects a very personal anxiety, how I feel I'm like surrounded by all these systems. I keep talking about this, that we don't see, but we feel them with intensity. And when I use browsers, platforms, digital information, I feel like I become a set of different sets of data, and there are all these companies that pick up on my preferences and choices that I make. And I feel like I'm giving out parts of myself with my online selections and searches and comments. And I always think how behind the screen there are mirrors that put together all these different parts of myself. And it makes me feel very exposed. And I always wonder what part of me do they have, and what do they understand, and what do they read of me. And this is what this piece is about, of course, amongst other things. This is titled The Puzzlers, Puzzlers 2. There is a number 1 as well. And it's a combination of myself and one of my children. I think a lot about a mirroring effect of how we mirror other people. It's like a mimicking mechanism that we have. But for me, this was very important as I see my children grow up, and I see them as past versions of myself, or how I used to be as a child, and then I also see them as future versions of myself. So it's this strange thing that I see in them, and and I think a lot about instinct, and how these compositions are very instinctive. They started happening just as my older son started entering puberty, and there was a lot of hormonal craziness going on. And then I started thinking about technology and artificial intelligence, and how these have learned how to read our emotions and feelings and predict our next moves, and how technology has learned our language, but we don't understand how technology technology's language, with self-learning machines. But we still have our animal instinct, and which the algorithms haven't fully understood. And our instinct is what connects us to our animal nature, and this has become very precious because this is the only way to resist the algorithmic predictions of our next move. We have to choose to exist instinctively. So here I'm thinking a lot about the ancient Greek god of the wilderness, Pan, who was half animal and half human, and he always had an erection. And he was the god of wilderness, panic, and nightmares. This piece is titled Sleepwalker, and it's my youngest son. And I think of the frame as a prosthetic exoskeleton. And I'm very interested in this connection between the different frames, which are highlighting what is missing between the different parts and what we're struggling unconsciously to put together. And to finish this presentation, I'm going to show you a segment of my latest video piece, which is titled Stone People. I'm thinking about the present data economy and how bodies transmit and receive valuable information just as other informational objects. And I'm thinking that turning into stone could make one invisible to technology, because as stone, you create no movement and no life, no data. And again, I'm thinking of a post-technological landscape, and stone people merge with rocks and ancient sculptures and ruins, and I see them as, visitors from a distant past. And this is where my presentation ends.
Thank you so much, Maria. That was a really thought-provoking talk. Wondering if there are any questions from the audience. You could either use the chat feature or you can speak your question if you like.
You have to use the chat feature because I don't think people can unmute themselves. But if anyone, while we wait to see if anyone has questions, I actually have a question, Maria. Well, one is, I guess, how did you come to develop your aesthetic, right? I feel like when a lot of artists think about technology and technology's effect on humans and the social landscape, it's usually kind of glitch work or maybe more, I don't want to use the word obvious, but your work feels very abstract, right? And especially your later work feels also really much about motherhood. And so I'm just curious how you came to really develop your aesthetic, and I'm sure some students are watching and would appreciate as well, and how you went from video work to creating these beautiful frames, and maybe talk about that transition as well. Yeah, I hope that made sense in terms of a question.
Exactly. First of all, I use a film, which is very important in my practice because, and this is a very big part of the aesthetic, because you can see the grain and, you talk about high-tech things and digital technology, and I choose to use film, which has a completely different texture. So, yes, so this is one thing. About working a lot, which is my latest work. The last 2 years, I use a lot my children. It happened kind of naturally because I think they stop being children and they start being adolescents. So it's more interesting than just children. It's like they're in this transition right now. And my life changed. So I wasn't out that much, roaming, taking pictures, because my earlier work, I was going there to take pictures. I was shooting in strange places, difficult places to access, in NASA centers or distraction sites, many. I've done a lot of work. And then I started, being at home more, and I don't know, it just happened. I started observing more what was happening in my closer, habitat or something. And then my videos are compositions of different elements. So they're like photo montages, they're like montages in a way, because I put different images, different sources together. So you see images from one thing and you hear a voiceover that comes from a different source. And I think that with the frames, I'm pretty much doing the same thing. Like I'm making compositions from different elements. And I'm just building on these narratives or something.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I answered all your questions.
Definitely. I think especially like the life change aspect, like of being a mother and spending more time at home and instinctively turning the lens both on yourself and your children is really interesting also.
First my children and then myself.
And then yourself, yeah. I do see we have a question in the chat. How do you construct your frames?
I don't construct them myself. I come up with a frame. I work with the photographs. I spend a lot of time on them, and then I work with people that build them. Sometimes they are with woodworkers, and sometimes I make some with metal workers. So I don't have the skills to make them myself. Yes.
There's another question that came up. The follow-up on your comment regarding your children, how involved are they? Do you discuss with them the project concept, or is it more of an action-oriented practice where while shooting and building the concept afterwards while editing?
No, it's like a fight and a constant, how can I say it, exchange of, I don't want to do this, come on. That's how I started taking pictures of myself, because sometimes it's very hard to work with other people. So they like it when they see it, but they're not very happy. I mean, they have to stop what they're doing and come and do my thing. So they don't collaborate always.
Mm-hmm.
It's a negotiation. That was the word I was using. Mm-hmm. It's a negotiation. And one is very dark skin and it's really writes really well on the film, and the other is really light skin and it doesn't write on the film at all. It's like a ghost, So it's interesting.
And then the question about your work evolving towards working with sound. So from working with imagery to working with more of a multimedia approach. Can you tell some-
I think of myself as a sound artist, and I've made a lot of sound works. So apart from creating these voiceovers and soundscapes, I also make sound works that they don't involve the visual element at all. So you just listen. I don't know how to answer. I'm fascinated with sound. I really like to record sound. I listen to a lot of things. Like I try to listen to every sound that happens in everywhere, wherever I am. I think it's similar to being a photographer, to being, to do acoustic work. It's an observation with different senses.
Do you usually record sounds yourself, or
Yes.
do you pull them from online and kind of remix? Are you just
Either.
both?
I do myself. I pull them from online. Either I create them. Sometimes I make them.
Mm-hmm.
So I improvise.
Does the sound come first, or does the video or the imagery come first for you?
Sometimes they come from different phases. So I can be waiting with my car for the ferry boat, and then I hear a sound and I think, oh, this is so interesting. So I just record it and I think, and I use it 3 years later, so I just accumulate things.
Mm-hmm.
Another question is asking you whether you feel that technology affects women and men differently.
Say it again.
A question that is asking for your thoughts on if you feel that technology affects women or men differently.
Affects.
Yeah.
That's a very big question. Of course, it's very different. I mean, I think a lot of things women and men, feel them or affect them very differently. It actually, I have all this theory, but I don't know if it's a good moment to. But I think that this technology that we're using if it had a Zandra, it would be male technology. And I think it's very Faustian as well. Like it becomes a little bit self-destructive in a way. And I think, yes, women, they use and, get affected very differently from technology. We have a different sensitivity. I don't know, it's very broad, but overall, yes, I think if a male artist was doing work with exactly the same themes that I use, it would be very interesting to see what they do, it would be very, very interesting.
There was another question that is wanting to know if your experience with technology has shifted because of COVID, because of the circumstances, because of the pandemic.
Yes and no. The way I work, my technique is very manual. Like I shoot film with a mechanic camera. I develop the film myself. So I start to use technology after I've created the images, then when I have to digitize them. I don't know. I mean, specifically with COVID, I'm not sure. I don't know.
Two people have brought up the wanting to know how you digitize your film. Is it scanning?
I scan with a negative scanner.
Okay. And then another question that came up, can you talk about how stones have made their way into your work and what ideas they bring out relative to our culture and information technology?
Yes. As I said, I'm from Greece, and I grew up, looking at antiquities and ancient sites, and this is what I'm still doing, which is all stone. And it's fascinating because you go to an ancient site and then you see these artifacts made out of stone, and then you see the real stones, and then what is culture, what is an artifact, what it isn't. This is always something very fascinating to me. The way it started was just a very simple gesture. I had the show in Brooklyn. I was already shooting in Greece ruins and ancient sculptures, and I was slowly making these photo montages, really slowly. And then I was putting together the show at Pioneer Works, and we had these screens, and there were different sizes. So I pulled these rocks from the garden and I put the screen on top, and it just made perfect sense because you have the screen and it's on the stone, and then it's like where the elements of the screen and the electronics are coming from, because they come from the stone. And then I was dealing with the ancient stones and the ancient stone artifacts, and then the stones were the first technology. So it made perfect sense. And so it made perfect sense. It's all technology.
I have a question. Now that because of COVID, a lot of exhibitions have moved online, including the MoMA New Photography Show. So, and how do you see your work translating to an online digital space? Because the work that you're showing specifically with the frames, or even in your earlier works with the video pieces, they're very sculptural. And so has your thought process shifted and how you are making work and how it's going to appear on the digital side of online, or are you making work then the same way and just hoping people think about it in a sculptural way or a 3D way?
And actually, working with photography, it's very easy to translate the work to see it on a digital format online, because it's not painting, it's not purely sculpture, it's photography. So already it has or video. So it already has the advantage of being easy to showcase digitally. That was a very big disappointment for everybody about the MoMA show, because it's different to see the pieces as wall pieces with the wood, and it's really beautiful. But you have to adjust and move on. I mean, and now, no, I'm not making new work that is thought about the screen. I keep on making the same work, but again, this medium is not favorable, to the digital. So I feel like I'm very lucky in that sense, because imagine making paintings. That's very hard, I think.
Well, just maybe following up on that, when you were talking about thinking about the forms of the frames, and I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about how you come to those designs, because at once, or they seem at once diagrammatical and almost circuit-like, and it seems to set up a tension between something that is made for machines like circuits and something that's made for humans. And I really like that tension, and seems to also be present in the other video sculptural pieces, where you have a screen that is image-based, and then you have all of the peripheral technologies that are necessary, to ensure that the functions are all the features are functioning in the installational sense. So the tension between something that's machine readable, maybe something that is human readable.
I have this idea that I think that the more we use this technology that we're using, this technology is designed in a way that it becomes intuitive. So you don't have to, I said it before as well, you don't have to think a lot about it. It comes to you very easily, you know, the information. And I start to think that the more we use interfaces and, you know, phones and screens and all of that, and interfaces like applications and how the photos are, then we start to think like that and see things like that. So when I make these designs and these works, I start to believe that we are in these systems, that these systems embody us, and we start to, or I start, because in the beginning I was taking pictures of systems, like, you know, a lot of I haven't shown you so much work, but I had making a lot of images of systematic compositions. But now I believe, and I was feeling like it was something that was outside of me, but now I believe that I am inside of it, you know, and we are becoming, we have become one with those systems. Not that the systems have become one with us. I think this is where the tension is. It is like, are you trying to humanize the machine, or is the human dehumanized? It's a little bit, I think there is a lot of thinking, you know, over there.
I feel like that's the perfect note to end on, and now we can all think about what we see and what we do is how technology has affected us in that way. Arthur, unless you have any last questions.
No.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Maria. I know it's probably late in Athens, but we really appreciate you joining us for this lecture series. Thank you everyone for tuning in. We have upcoming programs for the remainder of the year. You can check them out on aperture.org, and I'm sure Parsons has some really great events too. Oh, look in the chat. Thank you. So thanks everyone. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your evening. Thank you again, Maria.
Maria.
Thank you. I don't know how to answer to all these chats, but thank you so much for, you know, listening to me.
Thank you everyone for coming.
And for inviting me, of course.
Yes, of course. Have a good rest of your evening, everyone. Bye.
Bye.